You are listening to the Go Get Them show. This is a discussion that inspires entrepreneurs to pursue their passion to create meaningful, impactful, and sustainable companies in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. This is your host, Arun Krishna Kumar, together with my co-hosts, Maxon T and Sheila Mburu. We sit down with entrepreneurs, operators, and investors across frontier markets to discover their experiences, lessons learned, and how they make an impact so you can too.
No, I think for me, as Max said, like right out of finishing my master's and starting a company was something I didn't have in mind.
How we started the company. So having been spent almost 10 years in the financial services industry in different roles,
Cool. You're listening to the Go Get Them show. For this episode, we have very special guests. We have Afshan, Dadan, and Sanjeev, Kumar. Both of them are founders of Whitesight. And then I will run through a very quick introduction about both of them. So Afshan Dadan is the co-founder and head of research at Whitesight, a research firm that explores white spaces opportunities in the global fintech space. Afshan started a career at Burnmark before joining Asia Pacific Financial Services Private Limited, both as a research intern, and she holds a master's in global financial markets from BSc Institute and a Bachelor of Commerce, Accounting and Finance from Kishinchan. I will try my best to say this. Kishinchan Srilaram College of Arts, Commerce and Science. And we have Sanjeev Kumar. So Sanjeev Kumar is the founder and CEO of Whitesight, where he started his career at MDocs before joining Microsoft as a program manager, where he spent 3 years at Suntech Business Solutions as a product marketing lead before traveling to Tokyo to join Nuclear Software as a product manager. Sanjeev then joined Flytech, a Martech firm, as a product management and marketing fellow, and he spent further 3 years as a director and head of fintech research at Burnmark, and almost a year at PwC India as an associate director of fintech innovation before founding Whitesight. Sanjeev holds an MBA from the Indian Institute of Management, only one of the best in India, and BTech Tech IT Computer Science from India Institute of Information Technology. Welcome to the show, Sanjeev, Afshan.
Thanks for having us, Max, and
it's amazing, right? I wish when I get out of university, I can start a company immediately. But I guess first question I have, I am very intrigued by your journey to starting Whitesight. Perhaps we can start with Sanjeev, and then if Afshan, you have anything to add, happy to hear it as well. So over to you, Sanjeev.
Thanks a lot, Max. Thanks for having us here. And just to introduce ourselves, as in how we started the company. So having been spent almost 10 years in the financial services industry in different roles, I had a fortunate journey to witness the evolution of financial services industry, not just from the technology angle, but also in terms of the business models that were coming around when people started talking about fintech as a crossover from the financial crisis. So if you look at the way the financial services industry went over the financial crisis that happened in 2007 and 8, and the kind of business model questions that started popping up, people started asking about the changes that can be made to it. And as a part of my personal professional journey, I witnessed a lot of changes in the mindset in which the bankers and the technologists were thinking about the business model changes that were happening. And that's how I got into fintech. In fact, I got into fintech through one of my colleagues when she moved to London. And she asked me, why don't you come across and we can start a company on fintech research? And at that time, I was totally clueless. What is fintech? What is research? I haven't done either of them before. So I said, okay, what the hell? People are doing so many things. Let me jump from the hill. And that's how it happened. So we started Burnmark in 2016 officially. In fact, we started unofficially in 2015. And in 2016, we did the first report on challenger banking when nobody knew what challenger banking was. There was just news of Starling, Monzo, and Revolut trying to get a license from FCA. And the journey started from there. And after that, PwC happened just for a little while, which kind of pushed me even further towards entrepreneurial journey, because the moment you come back to an established firm, having been worked in a startup, you kind of feel the difference in the culture, in the things that you were allowed to do, and now you are getting a lot of approvals and questions, and before you can do those things. So I just wanted to go back and do something that I used to do in Burnmark, but something that I can do on my own, and that's how Whiteside happened.
Uh, Afshan, sorry, go ahead.
No, I think for me, as Max said, like right out of finishing my masters and starting a company was something I didn't have in mind. But with Sanjeev as my mentor, I had that confidence and I had that support, which and given um, his experience and the experience I also had through my internships, we did have that confidence that we could make a change and do something new and make it work, and we have made it work brilliantly, if I have to say so myself. And it's been really exciting so far, and I think we have a long way ahead and can't
I've
wait to
known
see
both
where it
of you for
goes.
such a long time. And Sanjeev, I didn't know you did your MBA from IIM. Now I have to stay away from you because I have so much respect for IIM, and I'm almost scared, petrified a little bit. And Afshan, although you humbly say he's your mentor, in every interaction I've had, I've always felt you come across in terms of the insights you bring to the table as equals. So it's amazing how you kind of make this work at Whiteside. And in terms of the Whiteside journey itself, and the kind of work that you've been doing on the fintech research side, I think I've seen some amazing content around neobank and challenger banks, and or the even until about a year and a half ago, we probably, apart from Nubank in Latin America, it's largely been a developed market kind of a trend. And feel free to challenge me if I'm wrong, but now we are seeing quite a lot of traction. I mean, kudo is did exist in Africa. I mean, I wasn't very aware of it until about a year ago, but it's now kind of become a global trend. So please tell us a little bit about that, Afshan. What are you seeing in that space? What excites you about neobanks, challenger banks, if I can interchangeably use that term?
Yeah, yeah. I think, as you rightly mentioned, the developed markets is where it started. I mean, we ourselves, when we started doing the neobank deep dives, it was looking at the UK banks because they were like the hot shots, and everyone knew what was going on, and people were talking how they're making losses, they're not going to sustain, they're not going to survive. And we thought, why? I mean, what's the reason behind that? And that was the driven curiosity which made us go look into their reports, look into their history and understand how they operate, how they work, and how they've managed to come where they are so far. And is it true that people saying they won't sustain? And it's not really the case, given that the way they're spending on their customer acquisition and marketing. It makes sense when you're a growth stage company to do that kind of investments and not expenses as such in growing the company, which will eventually make you sustain the company in the long run. You're comparing these challenger banks or neo banks, which are at this point, say 7 to 8 years old, to banks which have been established and been there for hundreds of years, right? So it's not like a apple to apple comparison there. And while the developed market neobanks, both in the US, in the UK, Europe, they have kind of, slowly gaining profitability and becoming more, I would say, stable. The ones which are coming up from the developing markets or the emerging markets are so unique, and like each of them are so unique in their own aspect. Some of them are even profitable right from the beginning, like Tinkoff. You've got new challengers coming up in South Asia with because of the whole regulatory support as well over there, like Mox. You've got Tonic, all of them. And the ones in Latin America, like Nubank, I think there's you can't say enough about them, the amazing things that they're doing. So I feel now is the time for the developing markets challenger banks to shine from all across Latin America, Middle East, Africa, and Southeast Asia, and even South Asia. We're seeing a lot of new ones coming up in India as well. So it's definitely, a very buzzing time for challenger banks, I would say. And that's one key favorite area of ours as well. So at time to time, we make sure to keep digging into it and
I
seeing
still
what's happening
remember
there.
one LinkedIn post. It was about 2 years back. That was the first time I knew Sanjeev. Someone had said something without, just on the with surface level knowledge about challenger banks, and Sanjeev took them apart, saying for these challenger banks, this is how they are operationally set up. And that's why when I think Sanjeev, I always think challenger banks. I know you guys are doing amazing stuff across different fintech trends, but um, the moment I was like, wow, this guy, he knows his stuff, is what I mean. It was amazing, that particular. I will remember that LinkedIn post for a long time. Anyways, Max, over to you.
I think I want to double click a little bit onto the neobank trend. Personally, I was there when Monzo raised their first 1 million on crowdfunding, right? Like 97, 93 seconds. I remember it was being asked in the class by a venture capitalist, also my lecturer. And I guess the challenge that, or should I say, the challenge that I've heard in the UK is a lot of people don't actually put their I guess their top line or their salary onto Monzos and the challenger banks. They spend a lot of it more on their traditional banking. And the anecdote that I was given yesterday from my colleague was, if you ask the girlfriend, right, the girlfriend really excited about Monzo, but if you ask her who she banks with, she would tell you HSBC, for example. So, like, how do we reconcile this, right? When will this shift happen? I guess that's what I'm excited about, because I think it will come. It's just a matter of time. But happy to hear your thoughts, right? When will the shift happen?
So, if I may take a shot at it, thanks, Max, for that intriguing question that, in fact, I've heard so many founders also talking about these days. In fact, that's one of the favorite questions from investors when they're looking to fund these guys. So, what we have seen in some of the older banks, in fact, if you look at the propositions that they came up with when they started off, it was actually to move the transactions away from incumbents to them, right? Most of the banks, if you look at Simple, which is like one of the oldest neo bank in US, they started off like, okay, why don't you come off and do all your transactions with us, and we'll give you some cashbacks, we'll charge you, we'll give you some loyalty reward points, etc. Which was later built upon in the business model of Chime and Monzo and Revolut, who started offering debit card and mobile apps for people to do easy, frictionless transactions. And now there is an increasingly focused push that we are seeing from people who have been in existence for the last 5 to 7 years to increase the offerings that they offer to their customers, to allow people to have incentives to make their account as the primary account rather than having a incumbent bank account and moving $500 that will help you take care of your expenses. And how most of these banks are doing it, so they have started allowing people to get their salaries early. So if you have a direct deposit in your bank, you'll get 2 days early. If you have direct deposit in your bank, you'll get overdraft protection. If you have direct deposit in your bank, you can have your card will not get declined even if it has zero balance. So it will save you from those embarrassing situations that you run into at times. And still, after having all these perks, we're just looking at the numbers of current accounts switching numbers that FCA publishes almost every month. You still see, there's not the movement of the needle is not happening across challenger banks. The only bank that has actually managed to do it is Starling, which is continuously coming up in top 3 banks, who is taking away customers from incumbents. But yeah, it's a tough nut, and I still feel it will take a couple of years before the incumbents will start to feel the heat and lose the primary relationships with their customers.
Why do you think that's the case? Like, why do users are still sticking with let's say the traditional banks, when, no offense, some of them are just horrible. Like, I've had a lot of bank accounts in the UK, some of them just horrible. But yeah, why do you think that's the case? I'm just interested to peel the onion a little bit. Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to trust. And as we all know, trust takes a long time to build. And that is where, if you look at the go-to-market strategy of Starling vis-a-vis the other bigger banks, from the beginning, it's very different. So if you look at Monzo and Revolut, they started with a prepaid card kind of a proposition, which they eventually graduated to a full-fledged banking. over time. If you look at Starling, they waited for a couple of years and they never started with a prepaid card and a mobile bank account with a debit card. They waited and they launched as a proper bank from the very beginning. And even after that launch, if you look at their messaging, they never talk about, shiny metal cards and, try to go after customer segments like Gen Z. And not like they don't have Gen Z as their customers, but their messaging, their branding, their offerings is starkly positioned towards people who are unhappily banked, who are not unbanked, right? And if you look at that proposition, that is something that is going to work in the longer run. And that is where your customer segment will realize. So if you look at Starling or even Nubank for that matter in Latin America, the way they have tried to solve the deposit side of the problem as well as the credit side of the problem is something that will help customers gain primary relationship with the bank.
I love what you said that, and it's going to stay with me for a long time. Unhappily banked versus unbanked, right? That's a massive, massive difference in terms of the articulation. Because I remember when Revolut and Monzo came into existence in the first few years, they were positioning themselves as financially driving financial inclusion. But when you say their strategy is more towards unhappily banked versus unbanked, then we know kind of what the strategy, I mean, kind of how they've taken it forward. Um, so let's move on to the next question, which is, and we'll probably do the rounds, right? All of us can answer that. It doesn't have to be just a guess. What's the hottest fintech trend? I think we should probably give Afshan a chance. Ladies first. You get to choose your first trend, and please don't choose. You know what my answer is, so please don't choose that.
I think for me, I wanted to talk about open banking since we've been doing a lot of work in that domain recently, and specifically in the Middle East. So open banking there has been quite, I would say, not so new, but the developments have been quite rapid in the recent years. So Bahrain was the first that established their open banking standards and implemented it quite quickly. And we see that the remaining regions like Saudi, you have Kuwait, you have UAE who are following quite rapidly. Like Saudi has plans to implement it in the coming year or so. And because of that, there's a lot of curiosity building up over there. The startups that are coming up, they have these innovative ideas, and with the regulatory support that's soon going to come in, they are also kind of amped up to bring these new products and services into the sphere. So for me, definitely open banking in the Middle East and even in other emerging markets is a big hot trend right now.
Yeah. So for me, I think I have to bring the elephant to the room because nobody spoke about it. So I'm going to jump in and take the spot. I would say embedded finance is probably something that is the hottest trend and probably will continue for the next couple of years at least. And if you look at the kind of players who have started to come in the financial industry, it's massive, right? We have never had this kind of a flux of players from so many different industries who have started to come in and so quickly, so rapidly. We have airlines industry who has started to come in finance with AirAsia launching, first the wallet, and now they have applied for a banking license also. So you will see what trend will emerge from a airline trying to become a bank. We have automotive player going after banking licenses and partnering with fintechs. We have insurance companies. We have supermarkets and telecoms where the usual suspect who have already been in banking for last 20, 30 years. But these new players like IKEA acquiring a bank to become a full-fledged bank, I mean, it's mind-boggling, the kind of players who are coming into banking. It just throws you off that what a competitive advantage will these guys build over time, and how incumbents and even fintechs will be able to defend their turf against these guys who not just come with massive advantage in terms of technology access that they have, but also the kind of fan following that they enjoy with their customer base. And if an Amazon and IKEA starts offering you a current account and a payment product why not? I spend almost 30% of my expense on Amazon anyway. So, so I might as well take banking from them and save some money over the transaction that I do there.
Oh my God, now you've left me in a little bit of a dilemma, actually. I mean, I can add a little bit on the embedded fintech point and then talk about my take on the hottest fintech trend. One of the things I see a lot, particularly because of the work we are doing in emerging markets, I think of the trends that I've seen, embedded fintech is huge. In Southeast Asia, we're seeing fisheries companies giving loans, agri-tech companies giving loans, agri-tech companies, agri-fintech, or I mean, agri-tech, fintech, whatever, the collaboration of that, it's becoming such a common trend. And how that's going to scale, and how we're going to see that scale is going to be such an interesting space to watch. And in Pakistan, we are seeing logistics company doing lending to their fleet. We see that in Indonesia as well. So I can't give you more without breaching NDAs, but this is such a exciting trend, and I have to admit, but I still think personally the hottest fintech trend for me is BNPL, primarily because some of the even the biggest names in fintech have embraced BNPL as their next step. Like I know the usual suspect of the challenger banks in this part of the world are moving there. I don't know if you saw Zest's announcement on the 50 million Series C, and they are moving towards BNPL as well. In fact, about a year and a half ago, we saw a trend where BNPLs were moving towards neobanking. Now it's actually the other way around, and it's almost hilarious how these hot trends, which probably are generated by SEOs, drive investor appetite towards a particular hashtag, and that makes people decide their strategy and their positioning with investors. I mean, to me, that is, I mean, when I say hottest, that's the way I see it. But embedded fintech is just up there for me. I'm a little bit disappointed about open banking, Afshan, primarily because I was so hopeful when FCA opened it up in the UK, or sorry, when is it ECB, EBA, they opened it up in the in Europe. I was hoping for a lot of innovation to come through. I mean, there is a lot of back end plumbing work that's happening on the open banking side, but I haven't really seen some massive, like, there's not been much news, let's say. So maybe SEO was actually make a difference. There's not been much Google works
Yeah.
around open banking, unfortunately. I'll pause there. Max, go for your take on this.
Now, Asha, do you want to add something on the open banking stuff?
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
I
oh,
think one
Um,
I mean, on the open banking stuff itself, the thing that you mentioned of not getting enough SEO, uptake, is that I feel open banking is more of a change that needs to first happen on the back end with the B2B partnerships themselves. And the consumer education part of it will come at a later stage, definitely, once you start seeing the results of it. But at this point, you go ask someone on the street, hey, do you know open banking? No one's going to say, yeah, I know
yeah,
about it. So I think the
sure.
back end transformation really needs to happen first. And I think that is happening slowly. But yeah.
Sure.
yeah. I think personally, I think it's a little bit of a weird one. It's not even a fintech trend. I think personally, it's a finance trend. There's a philosophical debate that we have here. It's the introduction of CBDC. How I see it, it's basically a new form of money. Today, within an economy, you have two types of money. Technically, you have cash, which is a liability from the central bank, and then you have the commercial bank deposits, right? Bank money, which is really 97% of the economy. One of the reasons why banks have stayed so powerful is because we are the bottleneck of the economy. You can't really move money without the banks, yeah, because you're technically moving their money. And I think by potentially introducing a third form of money, which whatever backing that central bank, especially in the Bank of England, decided to go for, that will really change the game a little bit, because you'll introduce new players, etc. And this is where I think all your different new models will be quite exciting, right? Your fintechs, embedded finance, CBDC will just be like an alternative rail at the back. And then you have open banking, which will, open up new opportunities for wallets, for example. It's like they have been building all this foundation for this to happen. It's, I guess, for me personally, I think that is going to be quite disruptive if it happens. And of course, we're still quite far away, and we all know how government takes time and years to get there.
So, Max, John, and I keep discussing that like a lot of the use cases we are seeing in fintech, you're going to see a complete overhaul once CBDC come in. I mean, like we don't even know if those things will be relevant at that point. I mean, it's almost there's quite a lot of unknowns in that CBDC box. So if you look at the quadrant, it is definitely interesting.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't claim that I know a lot about CBDC. Would love to get closer to that space. Anyway, so let's move on to the next question, and I'll start with Sanjeev if that's okay. Sanjeev, what's your most sustainable fintech trend in your view?
So I'm going to take another shot at becoming a contrarian here. A lot of people talk about the customer-centric innovation, for example, BNPL or neo banking or earned wage access or payment wallets and stuff like that. All that shiny stuff is all good. But in my experience of last 5 to 7 years, the way I've seen the rapid shift of trends on the consumer side of things, I'm going to take a safer bet and probably say something which is behind the scenes is something that I feel more sustainable in the next 3 to 5 years, and that trend I feel is banking as a service. So if you look at all the four options that we chose in the previous question, so I chose embedded finance, you said BNPL, Afshan mentioned open banking, and Max mentioned CBDC. What I feel, all those four trends cannot happen. Probably CBDC is not dependent on banking as a service as much as other three are. But what I feel, all those three trends that we spoke about cannot happen or cannot come to fruition if banking as a service doesn't expand its wings to the fullest. So if you look at BNPL, we mentioned players like from e-commerce industry, from fisheries industries, all of them started to do buy now pay later kind of offerings for their customers. And how they can do these things, because they have the banking infrastructure offered to them on a platter and in an on-demand manner, where they don't have to shell out banking license acquisition fees before they can offer that kind of service to their customers. Same is happening with open banking also. In fact, open banking is a more like tailwinds to banking as a service, where the data as well as the technology both can come together and can be offered to a non-bank or a fintech who can build on top of it. And finally, embedded finance, as I mentioned, embedded finance cannot come to fruition if banking as a service is not available. And when I'm saying banking as a service, I'm not saying incumbent banking as a service. I'm also including neo banking as a service. And that is what we just saw a couple of days back when Anne announced about Starling as a service, which is going to be phenomenal. The way she described it, it's amazing. This is one thing that kind of excites me about Starling, because the way she's going about the strategy of the bank, she's not looking to expand to 40 countries, right? She's trying to be behind the scenes and offer the technical expertise that she has built in UK and let it propel the innovation that can flourish using that expertise as well as the technical infrastructure. So I would say banking as a service is something that I feel will be sustainable over the next 5 years at least.
Yeah, to a certain extent, sorry, just to add on quick one, it feels like that's what Oak North is doing as well, because of their credit underwriting, banking as a service. They partner with AWS and then they just roll it out to the world. But yeah, I absolutely agree. That's really exciting. Sorry, Afshan.
I think I agree on that as well. I think the back-end rails need to be strong for whatever innovation we need to do on top of that, I guess.
So what's your pick? Is it banking as a service as well for you?
No,
Afshan?
for impactful, right? For impactful, see, I would say when you think of either anything in financial services or within fintech itself, the first, the primary blocks you look at are payments and lending. So within payments, if you pick whatever innovation is happening, I think the next era or the most impactful one in payments is going to be around account to account payments. So something like what we have in India with the UPI and the payments becoming like going from 100 to 1 million in I don't know what in such a short amount of time, and you're seeing the card networks jumping onto this journey. You're seeing various fintech providers jumping onto this journey, and even other regulators are also kind of taking it as an example and enabling these payment rails, which can thereafter enable more streamlined payments, account to account payments. So I would say account to account payments is one which is definitely going to be an impactful one. And as you know, payments connect to each and every segment, and it will just go multiplying thereon. So I would say that's my pick for impactful.
I was really hoping you would say super apps, Afshan.
Ah, super apps is quite on the, I would say, high level. Impactful, I'm not sure about that. Trending, definitely.
Right. On the sustainable trend or impactful trend, whatever, however you want to view this, Max, what's your take?
Well, when everybody say it's not sustainable, I'm going to say it's sustainable. Crypto. Everyone keeps saying that it's not sustainable.
That was my take. Okay, you got
Yeah.
it.
I actually think it's the other way around. I personally feel like we're only scratching the surface on how a monetary or rule-based monetary system will be, which is technically what Bitcoin is. And I think there are a lot more opportunities, and people are going to dive in here and start exploring a little bit more. I think with the introduction of like metaverses, I spent a lot of my time playing games when I was younger, and I think something like this would be really impactful, right? Because all my times and Ragnarok spent items would have earned me something today. But those are, well, at the moment, those are spent. So hopefully one day I get to recoup all my childhood through crypto. But yes,
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for stealing the thunder. I was hoping to say cryptos as well. So I have to think of something else. Probably EWA was next on my list. I particularly like that model primarily because because I see several investors looking at top EWA founders, if you like, and investing in them across emerging markets now, particularly QED, for instance. But I see sense in what they're doing, right? I mean, you've earned, you are in the middle of the month, you want some cash, and you want to just kind of draw that from your employer, right? That's like some really basic thinking. It's not complex. It's very simple. The credit profile of the whole product kind of lends itself very well there. I just love that thinking. I mean, it's been there for some time, and we all do that. Like, for instance, travel loans is pretty common in the UK. They provide season tickets, and you can get that sponsored by your employer and stuff like that. But this is in kind of scale is going to be, I think, quite sustainable. Primarily because there'll be quite a lot of lending happening at quite low risk profile. So I really think that that is going to be a hot trend for years to come. But I think we've discussed quite a lot of things, and of all the discussions we've had so far on the different hashtags, if you like, I somehow one thing that I just love is embedded fintech, right? Sanjeev, you mentioned because it's scalable. You just have to build the rails behind the scenes, and you can probably do that. I see that all the time these days. And one of the funny things I see that is that lot of investors who actually love fintech don't get embedded fintech yet. So it is still at a very nascent state, and there is so much to be done there, and so much already happening there without people realizing that. So that is probably going to be another key trend that we should follow. Uh, I think on that note, we've discussed so many hot topics, and it's been fascinating having this conversation with you all. On that lovely note, thank you so much for your time, and I really hope we will see a lot more insights from Whitesight, Sanjeev, and Afshan. We really look forward to that in the years to come.
Just before we close off, a quick one. Where can people find out more about Whitesight? Where can they follow you on Twitter? Perhaps just a little bit of a shameless plug to the audience.
So you can easily find us on our website, which is whiteside.net. And we're pretty active on LinkedIn, which is at Whiteside, and on Twitter with the same name. So anyway, you just search Whiteside Fintech and you should be able to find us very easily.
Awesome. And with that, thank you so much for listening in, and thank you so much, Sanjeev and Afshan, for joining us and sharing with us a lot of interesting insights from FinTech. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.